Sarah wouldn't stop crying. Her mother quietly told a production assistant, "I'm sorry, maybe we should leave." They were seated in the front row at NBC Burbank Studios, using the tickets her late husband had won months earlier. Since the show began, Sarah had been in tears. Watching The Tonight Show without her dad felt overwhelming. The production assistant nodded with understanding and began guiding them toward the exit. That was the moment Johnny Carson paused in the middle of his monologue. It was March 8, 1983. The Tonight Show was being filmed before a full studio audience, one of the most difficult tickets to get in television. Around 300 people were watching Johnny do what he had done thousands of times before: make the country laugh. Everything in the monologue was going smoothly. The jokes were working, the rhythm was steady, and the show was following its usual flow, except for the young girl in the front row who couldn't stop crying. Sarah Mitchell was 10 years old, and 3 weeks earlier her life had completely changed. Her father, David Mitchell, had died in a car crash on February 15th. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit his car on the driver's side. He passed away instantly. He was just 36. David had been the biggest Johnny Carson fan Sarah had ever known. His love for the show was well known in their small Los Angeles suburb. He never missed an episode. He even programmed the family VCR to record every show in case he fell asleep. He repeated Johnny's jokes at his job and even practiced Johnny's golf swing in the backyard. 5 months before the accident, David had done something unexpected. He entered a radio contest and called nearly 300 times over 2 days, determined to win tickets to a taping of The Tonight Show. When he finally won, he shouted so loudly that Sarah ran from her room, worried something had happened. "We're going to see Johnny," he said, lifting Sarah and spinning her around. "Front row seats. You and me, kiddo. We'll be close enough to see him breathe." His wife, Linda, had laughed at his excitement. "It's just a TV show, David." But David shook his head. "It's not just a show. It's Johnny Carson. He's the one who makes everything feel okay. No matter how rough your day is, Johnny makes it better." Sarah had been counting the days. She and her father had made a paper chain, one link for every day leading up to the taping. Each morning at breakfast, they would remove one link together, watching the chain get shorter as their special night approached. They had planned everything: what they would wear, how they'd react if Johnny spoke to the audience, and how they might try to make him laugh. Then February 15th changed everything. The paper chain was still hanging in Sarah's room, with 11 links left when the police arrived at their door. After the funeral, Linda wasn't sure what to do with the tickets. They weren't transferable, and one was issued directly in David's name. Throwing them out felt wrong. They were the last thing David had been excited about, the final event he had counted down to. The taping was still 3 weeks away. Going without him felt emotionally overwhelming. But Sarah made the choice for both of them. "I want to go, Mom," she said 5 days before the show. "Dad would want us to go." "Honey, I'm not sure that's a good idea. It might be too painful." "I know it'll hurt," Sarah replied. "But Dad called 300 times to win those tickets. He was so happy. If we don't go, it feels like that happiness disappears too. I want to keep it alive." Linda looked at her 10-year-old daughter. This young child who had just lost her father yet was thinking more clearly than most adults, and made a decision. They would go. On the night of the taping, Sarah insisted on wearing her father's Tonight Show t-shirt. It was a men's large, far too big for her, hanging almost to her knees. But it smelled like him, his aftershave, his detergent, and all the familiar scents that meant comfort and home. She also carried something else. Her dad had kept the radio contest's winning letter in his wallet, the official notice confirming he had won the tickets. Sarah had found it after the accident and kept it in her pocket, almost like a good luck charm. To her, it was proof he was meant to be part of this night. When they reached NBC Studios, Sarah was managing her emotions. She was nervous and sad, but steady. She felt she could do this, honor her father by attending the show he had been excited about for nearly 5 months. Then the show began. The warm-up comedian shared a few jokes. The crowd reacted with laughter. Doc Severinsen and the band played the theme. Ed McMahon delivered his introduction, and Johnny Carson stepped through the curtain. At that moment, reality hit Sarah hard. Her dad should have been there. He should have been holding her hand, whispering in that excited voice, "There he is." He should have been the one smiling at the jokes, leaning forward, and enjoying every moment. Instead, the seat next to her, his seat, was empty. Sarah began to cry. Not quiet tears she could hide, but deep, uncontrollable sobs filled with real grief. She couldn't stop. The harder she tried to settle herself, the more overwhelmed she became. Linda wrapped an arm around her, trying to shield her from the people nearby. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. We can leave if you want." But Sarah didn't want to go. Leaving felt like letting go of her dad's excitement, as if his joy disappeared with him. She wanted to honor that, even through the sadness. She shook her head, but the tears didn't stop. The show moved on. Johnny delivered his monologue. The audience laughed. Ed responded at the usual moments. Doc and the band followed every cue. And through all of it, Sarah kept crying. Her vision blurred. She couldn't hear Johnny's jokes through her sobs. The show she had waited months for was unfolding right in front of her, but all she could feel was the empty space where her dad should have been. By the time Johnny wrapped up his monologue and walked toward his desk, Linda came to a conclusion. This wasn't helping. Sarah couldn't calm down, and staying was only adding to the distress. It was clear they needed to step out. She met the eyes of a production assistant standing near the stage. "I'm sorry," Linda whispered, careful not to interrupt the taping. "My daughter can't stop crying. Her father recently passed away. These were his tickets. I think we should leave." The production assistant nodded with understanding. This situation was rare, but it made sense. "Let me help you exit quietly," she whispered, gently directing them toward the side door. That's when Johnny noticed what was happening. He had been walking back toward his desk, ready to introduce the first guest, when something in the corner of his eye drew his attention. Someone in the front row was moving. A production assistant was escorting a mother and her daughter out. The woman looked overwhelmed. The young girl, wearing an oversized Tonight Show shirt, was crying uncontrollably. Johnny stopped mid-step. Ed glanced at him, unsure what was happening. In the control booth, the director spoke into Johnny's earpiece. "Johnny, you're on in 5 seconds. Ready for the first guest introduction." But Johnny wasn't paying attention to the countdown. His focus stayed on the little girl being guided toward the exit. Something about the moment felt off. The shirt she wore was far too big, clearly belonging to someone else. She was holding something tightly in her hand, and even as she walked away, she kept glancing back at the stage, as if she wanted to remain but felt she couldn't. Then Johnny did something he had never done in 21 years of hosting The Tonight Show. He stepped away from his mark and walked directly toward the front row. The director's voice in his earpiece grew firm. "Johnny, what are you doing? We're shooting live to tape." Ed rose from his seat. Doc lowered his hands. The audience murmured, unsure of what was happening. But Johnny kept going. He reached the production assistant and the Mitchell family, stopping right in front of them. "Wait," Johnny said softly. "Don't take them out yet." The production assistant froze, unsure of the proper protocol. Linda stared at Johnny Carson, her husband's favorite entertainer, now standing just inches away, speaking directly to her. Johnny turned his attention to Sarah. Her crying had stopped out of surprise. She looked at him with red, tired eyes. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Johnny asked gently. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah, that's a lovely name." He motioned to the large shirt she wore. "I see you're a Tonight Show fan." Sarah's lip quivered. "My dad was. This was his shirt. He passed away 3 weeks ago. These were his tickets. He was supposed to come with me." The studio fell completely quiet. 300 people listened without a sound. Johnny glanced at Linda. She nodded softly, tears running down her cheeks. "He loved your show," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He never missed an episode. He called over 300 times to win these tickets. He was so excited. We were supposed to be here together." Johnny felt something stir inside him. He turned toward Ed, who was watching with his hand covering his mouth. Then he looked back at Sarah. "Your father sounds like a remarkable man," Johnny told her. "He was," Sarah whispered. "Listen to me, Sarah," Johnny said. Johnny spoke with a calm but steady tone. "Sarah, I know you're hurting. I know this night isn't what you expected, but your father wanted you to experience this. He called in 300 times because he wanted you here to watch the show and remember this moment. And if you leave right now, still in tears, the memory he hoped for won't happen." Sarah looked at him, listening closely. "So here's what I'm thinking," Johnny continued. "I'd like to bring you up on stage with me. You can sit right in Ed's chair." He glanced at Ed, who agreed instantly. "You'll be part of the show tonight, and we'll make sure that wherever your father is, he knows his daughter is doing okay. Does that sound all right?" Sarah turned to her mother. Linda nodded, unable to speak. Okay, Sarah whispered. Johnny rose and held out his hand. Sarah placed her small hand in his, and he guided her toward the stage. The audience, unsure at first, began to realize what was happening. Applause started softly, then grew stronger as people understood the moment. Johnny guided Sarah onto the stage. He brought her to Ed's chair, the same chair where countless well-known guests had sat over the years, from actors to presidents to major public figures. You sit right here, Johnny said, checking that she felt settled. Ed, you don't mind standing for a little while, do you? Not at all, Ed replied, his voice slightly unsteady. The seat is hers tonight. Johnny returned to his desk and sat down. He glanced from Sarah to the camera, then back to her. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his tone measured and sincere. I want you to meet someone. He gestured toward her. This is Sarah Mitchell. She's 10 years old. Her father was supposed to be here with her tonight. He earned these tickets after calling a radio station 300 times. But he passed away 3 weeks ago and never got the chance to bring her to the show. The audience went still. All 300 people listened quietly. Sarah's father never missed an episode of The Tonight Show. Not once, Johnny continued. He cared about this show deeply. And Sarah does, too, because it reminded her of him. He paused, speaking with care. So tonight, we're going to do something meaningful. We're going to make sure Sarah's father knows she's here, and that she's all right, and that the moment he looked forward to didn't disappear. Johnny turned toward Doc, you know what to play. Doc Severinsen, who had performed beside Johnny for decades and understood his cues instinctively, nodded and signaled the band. They began playing Here's That Rainy Day, one of Johnny's longtime favorite pieces, the same song Bette Midler would later perform during his final show 9 years later. A song tied to reflection, memory, and the things people hold close. Johnny didn't sing, he rarely did, but he chose another approach. He stepped away from his desk, walked to Sarah, and sat on the edge of Ed's desk beside her. Your dad can hear this, Johnny said quietly, speaking only to her. Johnny assured her, his voice calm but firm. Wherever he is, I promise he can hear this. And he's proud of you for being brave enough to come here tonight. Sarah's tears changed, no longer just sorrow, but healing, gentle tears. As the music played, something remarkable happened in the studio. 300 strangers, who had come to laugh, found themselves moved to tears. Not sad tears, but the kind that come from witnessing something real, something meaningful. When the song ended, Johnny helped Sarah down from the chair. Before returning to her mother, she did something unexpected, even for herself. She hugged Johnny Carson. Not a formal hug, but a heartfelt one, the kind you give someone who has just rescued you. Thank you, she whispered. Daddy would have loved this. I know he would have, Johnny replied. And Sarah, he's proud of you for being brave and keeping his dream alive. Linda, standing at the edge of the stage, mouthed her thanks through tears. Johnny nodded and addressed the audience. We'll take a quick break. When we return, we have wonderful guests, but I think we all needed this moment first. During the commercial break, Johnny asked a production assistant to bring Sarah and her mother backstage after the show. When they arrived, he handed Sarah a special gift, a pen he used for signing autographs, engraved with the Tonight Show logo. He signed it for her, for Sarah and David Mitchell. Your dad had great taste in TV shows. With admiration, Johnny Carson. Then he made her a promise. Sarah, every year on March 8th, during my monologue, I'll tell a joke and dedicate it to your father. So you'll always know someone remembers him, remembers that he called in 300 times, remembers that he loved this show. Sarah, clutching the pen as if it were gold, nodded. Johnny kept that promise until his retirement in 1992. Every March 8th, he paused his monologue to say, this next joke is dedicated to the memory of David Mitchell, who understood that laughter matters. Sarah always watched. Sarah Mitchell is now 41 and works as a grief counselor in Los Angeles, helping children who have lost parents. On her office wall, the pen sits framed alongside the letter her father received confirming the Tonight Show tickets. She still watches reruns whenever she can, still wears her father's oversized shirt each March 8th, faded but priceless. Every year, she lights a candle and remembers the night the king of late night stopped his show to lift a grieving little girl. My dad gave me the Tonight Show, Sarah says, but Johnny Carson gave me permission to grieve and still find joy. He showed me that my dad's love didn't die. It just found new ways to reach me. In 2015, Sarah's daughter Danielle turned 10. For her birthday, Sarah showed her the episode. Together, they watched as Johnny paused his monologue, brought Sarah onto the stage, and reminded them both that noticing someone in pain can change a life. "Did you really know him?" Danielle asked. "For 5 minutes," Sarah said. "But in those 5 minutes, he stopped being Johnny Carson, the host, and became Johnny Carson, the human being. And that made all the difference." Johnny Carson passed away in 2005, 22 years after that March night. Sarah wrote a letter to his widow, Alexis, explaining what Johnny had done for her, how he had saved her in ways he might never have realized. A month later, she received a reply. Alexis wrote, "Johnny remembered you. That night was one of the moments he was most proud of in 30 years of television. Thank you for reminding me that my husband's greatest gift wasn't making people laugh. It was making people feel seen." That night, Johnny saw a hurting child and decided she mattered more than the show, the schedule, the 300 people in the audience, and the millions watching at home. He stopped everything to make sure a 10-year-old girl knew she wasn't alone. This is what happens when you stop for someone. You don't just change one night, you change a lifetime. If this story of grief, compassion, and the healing power of being seen moved you, share it with someone who needs to know that even in our darkest moments, someone might notice us and reach out. Have you ever been saved by a moment of unexpected kindness? Share your story in the comments and hit the notification bell for more true stories of moments when television legends became real-life guardians.